Welcome back to Bits and Boards today. I am Anthony Krolikowski, as always, and for today's episode, we have a game developer not even from the U.S., which in my opinion is a great thing. It's nice to have some variety. I know obviously we are a local television station, but it's nice to just have people from all over the place and not just from our neighboring states, but from this one, we have somebody from Canada. So joining me today is Anthony Botsford, also known as Troop Sushi. So thank you very much. There's always a lot of Anthony's. It's a very common name, even out here. So
Absolutely, yes. I remember when you reached out to me, I was like, oh my God, what are the chances another Anthony out there? But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I mean, as I'm known online, people call me Troop Sushi, but again, I love the camaraderie here. Never met a bad Anthony in my life.
That's the spirit. I know it's something that I found not odd, but something to get used to in the gaming world. I've emceed an event for a LAN convention here locally, and everybody goes by their gamer tag. And for being in such a professional environment, right, with news, it's just so odd to refer to somebody by like Magikarp 128 or something crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of love it, right? Because it's. I mean, there's a lot of charm in there, but there's also just that's their origin story. It feels like what's the story behind the name? And everyone's like, how did you come up with the name Troop Sushi of all things? Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was super charming, regardless of how unprofessional it might be. For sure.
Well, don't worry, professionalism. Video games are about having fun. A show like this is more about fun, and it's how this world operates, the gaming world, so there's nothing wrong with that. I can't complain.
Right there with you.
When it comes to your game here, which is called DOWNSOUTH, first just introduce this to me and tell me a little bit about how this came to be and where it's at right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, so DOWNSOUTH is a platformer RPG, a moral dilemma platformer RPG at that, where your choices affect your sanity. So this game, it's quite an interesting one because, again, as I said, it's a mixture of quite a few genres there, the sort of platforming side and the RPG side. I always really wanted to make a game that was, well, really kind of a collage of a lot of things. I'm a big fan of psychology myself, so I was like, okay, I want to make a game that sort of is almost a bit of a commentary on the human experience. In some sense, I want to make a game that sort of gets people to test their own morality in sort of a world that's, kind of dystopian and strange. And then on top of that, I really wanted to make it feel something like kind of alive and tangible. So a lot of that came through just with, the way that you interact with the platforming world. So having this sort of strange, and in the game it's this little purple bean character named South, which is quite a unconventional, protagonist as far as that goes. But I really wanted that to sort of feel like its own sort of weird little space, especially in the indie scene, right? There's so many different kind of diverse worlds. And then, alongside that, I really wanted to delve into the psychology of it all and really have people kind of be pushed to their limits in a sort of, I guess, both mental and sort of human sense. To really explore the bounds of how far you'd go to save a life as the promotional material goes. But yeah, that's kind of an overview of DOWNSOUTH as a whole.
I know from my age group and also growing up that when Undertale was a hot thing in the years to come, we've seen a couple games kind of the similar vein of testing morality and going down a path of more of a pacifist to more of a total destruction sort of run. I've played games that have similar playstyle here, like Under Hero, which is more of an RPG-esque, like turn-based Paper Mario gameplay. And then I've covered Athenian Rhapsody and Tales of Tuscany, who's a local game developer that I've had a couple of times on here. And his game has that sort of free open world-esque, but it plays more like WarioWare with kind of like the Undertale battle system. So tell me about when it comes to your world building and the way that this game plays out the gameplay, the genre here, how you've meshed that together and why you've chosen to have the game go down this path.
Yeah, so you mentioned Undertale. I think that's a great comparison point because, obviously it's a source of inspiration. I'd also say, I don't know if you're familiar with Katana Zero, but that was also a big one in regards to sort of the storytelling aspect there and the fact of integrating player choice. That's obviously a really big part of it. So, yeah, I would say kind of the way that I wanted to break it down, because obviously we've seen a lot of things, and I think obviously Undertale was such a cultural phenomenon. It really inspired so many other games like it. But I think with DOWNSOUTH, I really wanted to try And I'm a huge platforming guy, so coming from the world of like Rayman games or even like Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario, anything like that. And I wanted to kind of bridge these things that I love together in a way that hadn't really been done before. So we've seen a lot of sort of the classic like Earthbound sort of inspired. Or just kind of top-down RPG kind of things. I wanted to bring that into the platforming world where we could kind of have this genre blend of the fluidity of the movement of platformers and like the fact that you could explore every little nook and cranny, even like Hollow Knight, those kinds of experiences, where it's just this huge open world because it feels so live and bustling. And then bring in that sort of depth of Undertale where it's just this, it's like, oh, every single little character here has just got something going on. Because I think as a player, definitely, I mean, obviously, I think any good game designer has kind of come from a place of the experiences that they love, and it goes for any artist for that matter. But I was always really just sort of inspired seeing all of those individual aspects, and I was like, what if we could put that together in a way that has the depth of Undertale, and it has the humanity and the story and the heart of Undertale, and it has also sort of the depth in the world of something like Hollow Knight or any other kind of really deep world. But yeah, as far as things like that go, I think it does sort of fit among the like kind of games like Undertale and stuff like that, just because it's it's a game with heart as much as it's a game with kind of brutal destruction, as we were saying. But it's all up to you. It's the choices that you make, and I think that's sort of the there's no wrong way to play.
You mentioned Earthbound there too, and when playing that game back on the Windows and the Wii U Virtual Console, the witty humor there, even though it's an old game, really stood the test of time with the music and the art and just kind of the quirkiness of it. And looking at your characters and the design here, that grin, that smirk on your main character, your protagonist here, it really it gives it a lot of fun. So talking about also on the artist end of things, this world that you've built and fleshed out in this way, what is the direction there?
Yes, well, that's got to be one of my favorite questions that we've got for anyone curious, right? In the back there, my little purple bean son. But yeah, so for this project, I actually am the sole artist behind all of the visuals that you see, so all the pixel art and all that stuff. And I'd say that it's definitely my kind of creative child in that sense. It's been something that I've been pouring my soul into for the better part of like 7 years. But yeah, I think it really comes from a lot of different sources in my life. I would say, there's definitely a gritty realism to it, which can come from, the city that I live in, like people that I've met on my travels or whatever. Even just like things you hear around the world about different parts of the world, like, the Kowloon walled city and the sort of how crazy and stacked up and dystopian that feels, or even sort of movies like WALL-E or like 1984. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting setting. Like, there's just so much to unpack there, and it's quite a real setting too, and you can't really get much better than the real world. But in terms of the quirkiness of it, I think that's where the it really goes from being like, okay, we're playing a game about this horrible civilization, then we're like, okay, and now we've got a bunch of cartoon characters that are in it. And yeah, I think that's sort of where I really had fun with it, because and I would also say that's where the heart and soul comes in, because the way that I see it is it's almost a bit of a parody of our own world in some sense. Like, a lot of the characters, I mean, they're obviously sort of cartoonish and strange, and they're all based off of different plants, hence the purple bean. But I was always like, how can we make these characters feel real while also, giving them a bit of that quirky charm to them that people can attach to and sort of project themselves onto, especially the main character, right? Because you're going to be playing as them, making choices as them. And yeah, in that sense, I think that was always my goal as an artist, was just to make something that resonated with people. Obviously, I'm a big fan of, SpongeBob and stuff like that, like old cartoons from like the 2000s. I got like everything on hand. But, like Invader Zim, anything like that, and even sort of early stuff from, like, like Flash animations and things like that. And I was like, that's such a charming, like, we're talking about the whole professionalism thing earlier. Like, it's such a, I don't even know, like, it's just a kind of raw humanity. And I've always just loved that so much, and I was like, if we could channel that into a game about humanity, I think that would just be such a beautiful concept. I think that would just be so nicely put together. And so that's, yeah, I mean, from my own experiences playing games, everything like that, that's kind of where that comes from.
We hear time and time again, either on social media or wherever, authenticity sells. And of course, making something that you feel represents what you believe in or what you enjoy certainly will come through and come across as very genuine and enjoyable to people. That's the goal and the hope. And I know you have the demo that came out recently here that came in conjunction with the Kickstarter. So first, just tell me, before we get to the Kickstarter angle of things, what can people come to expect from this demo that you've put out?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the demo is the entire first chapter of the game. As I said, it's been in development for a long time, and people have been following it for quite a while, so I was like, well, we want to make sure this is worthwhile. So the entire first chapter is now out to play. It's free. You can, go off and have some fun with it. It's pretty lengthy, too. There's, a good hour and a half of gameplay in there if you're taking your time and exploring every little thing. But it's basically the first sort of what to expect from the rest of the game. There's a little bit of the kind of the sanity, sort of morality aspect of, you make your choices and then it affects the main protagonist. There's the huge sprawling worlds that are there. And they themselves are filled with characters. There's a lot of little interactions, kind of akin to Earthbound and stuff like that, that are very much like, oh, okay, this character's leading me down a path somewhere, or this is their alignment on the morality scale, so to speak. But yeah, there's just tons of stuff there, and I think it's everything from the platforming side, like you've got the fun sort of fluid, crazy gameplay that you come to expect from platformers, and then you've got the little bits of the RPG kind of thing starting to come in. I would definitely say the sanity mechanic is a bit of a slow burn, right? We're gonna see that unfold throughout the entire game, but yeah, this is the first taste of it all. So I think you'll get a little bit of everything that we've been talking about. All the art, the music, and everything like that. It's been pretty much a labor of love up until this point, and that's not to say that it won't be. It's going to be a labor of love until I finish this thing. But yeah, it's just a little kind of view into my strange little world here.
And how long have you been working on this so far? I know as the art here, it looks amazing. From my own personal opinion here, which in the news world we don't get to hear personal opinions too much, but this being a kind of a separate show sort of thing, we can do that. But it looks very pretty in a zany and crazy way. I could certainly appreciate it. So how much work have you and your team here have put into this project?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, as I said, it's been like 7 years, and that isn't to say we've been developing just the chapter for 7 years, but I would say a good chunk of that time was just getting the entire game planned out. So just sort of figuring out, okay, who are these characters? Who are we going to meet along the journey? How is the main character going to develop, and all these sorts of things. And so, yeah, so a better part of that time was mostly just my kind of creative echo chamber, and I was just sitting there like, how can I tell a story about this sort of thing? Because there's a lot of nuance in telling a story about morality. It's one of the things that is, like, it requires the most balance and understanding of human psychology, for sure. But, I would say once we kind of got the groundwork running and going, we started developing it in one engine, which it's kind of, I guess it's a more niche engine. It's called ClickTeam Fusion, and we started kind of making prototypes. That's sort of what we started posting about back in, I want to say, like 2023 or something like that. We ended up switching engines later on to another one called Game Maker, which is like, that's what Undertale is made in, for instance. It's more of a popular one, and that was a great choice just because we were able to more collaboratively work on it. And that's, I think, probably in the last year or so what we've been doing in terms of assembling the game and using all of our learning from that time to really put it together. But yeah, the team's been working really hard at it. We've got I do quite a large chunk of the game myself, so I do the art, the writing, the sound design, a good chunk of the music, and the levels and stuff like that. I've got two great programmers. Shout out to my friend or my buddies Anselmo Noriega and Diego Batiz. Those guys are great. And then kind of one of my favorite aspects of it in terms of giving credits to where credit is due is the soundtrack, and that one's a bit of an interesting one because we originally were going to have just one musician, but we ended up, just because it's such an eclectic and kind of crazy and zany, as you said, kind of game, and it has so many different tones from really dark moments to really bright kind of comedic bits. We ended up going with a whole kind of diverse cast of musicians. So you've got everything from sort of orchestral stuff to drum and bass to more just kind of weird funky music. And yeah, that has also taken a fair portion of time to just sort of figure out what the game sounds like, because it's just so many things, right? But yeah, that's what I would say for that.
When I think about soundtracks and how important that is, I don't know if you've played Mugenics recently or seen that. It just came out not too long ago.
Oh, it looks brilliant.
the music there's a lot of songs with vocals behind it, and it's just so funny to hear the lyrics, and like it's definitely spawned some memes on social media with people like dancing along to the crazy unhinged tracks, and it makes for a good time. And it's definitely, I'm not, games with songs or vocals behind them, it's really adds some fun. Not to say that yours has to have that or does have that, but music can really sell something a step further, and it's definitely, games are also an art piece here too, in a way. It's a lot of effort that you put in to make it happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm a firm believer as well that games are art pieces, right? But it's so magical because they're not only art pieces, but they're interactive, which is so nice. And I think it's one of the only art forms that does that. So it's awesome to see so many different kind of creative disciplines kind of coming together to form one thing, whether it's music or art or programming. But yeah, no, totally agree.
Well, we got to go to a little break here, but when we come back, we're going to hear more about this process you have to actually make this game become a reality for everybody and everything else that goes in between and making it fun. So stay with us and we'll be right back for you. All right, so Anthony is interviewing Anthony about Anthony's game that Anthony made, and Anthony wants to learn more about it. So we're going to start with story here first. So you already told me a little bit about your character. Tell me a little bit more about this plot here, the setting. What leads us into this world and the characters we're going to meet?
Yes, absolutely. So the plot is quite an interesting one. It's you wouldn't, I think, expect it from the kind of characters that you see when you look at the Kickstarter, the page or whatever. The plot kind of revolves around this purple bean kind of character. He's sort of fueled by this stimulant. His name is South, by the way, hence the name Down South. But he's fueled by this stimulant called P40Z, which is sort of, he's so reliant on it that he needs it to survive. And it isn't long, he's kind of going about the world, understanding how it works, and obviously kind of dealing with this his reliance on it and the fact that he doesn't have any to sort of fulfill his need. But it's not long after the kind of corporation responsible for P40 finds him, and they're like, "Hey, you've got potential, kid. Like, we could give you this P40 in return for a little favor of ours." And so, they see that he's got this, ability to just, he's completely moldable. He's a player. He's capable of making choices, and they're like, "Okay, we can, if you can exterminate some clients for us, get rid of a couple people we need gone, then we'll give you this thing that you need in return." And so that's sort of what sets up the entire game, in the sense that, like, you're going through these worlds and you're able to take in the sights and see it all, but at the end of the day, you need to decide whether or not these people that you're supposed to exterminate are worth the value of your own survival. So again, it gets a little on the dark side, I would say, but I think it's always kind of rooted in humanity. And so, everything from the characters you meet along the way, there's they're all there to sort of test and see where you fit in the kind of morally gray world. So you've got characters that are a lot more friendly. There's a little kind of, and they're all vegetables, but there's a green onion or a scallion. His name is Schroeder, and he's sort of this like kind of friendly character. I'd liken him to like Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad or something like that. He's a little scrappy, but he's got a heart. You've got like your shopkeeper, the classic sort of mysterious guy in the shadows who's just giving you the upgrades you need to make it through. And then you've got the guy who owns the sort of corporation called the Basement, and he's the one who supplies it all, and he's sort of the hands behind the operation. Quite literally, he's a giant pair of arms that sort of swoops down from the ceiling. So yeah, there's a huge diverse cast of characters, and obviously there's way more that you'll meet kind of just sprawling throughout the city. But the main character is very much meant to be molded and meant to be kind of shaped into who you want him to be, and he's one of the sort of characters that has a soul, so to speak. So he's throughout the game, depending on the choices that you make, you'll either gain soul points or you'll lose soul points, which will affect his visual appearance. It'll affect the way that he interacts with the world. It'll affect his combat. It'll affect the amount of dialogue options that you have to be able to talk to people. So the more soul points you lose, the more dialogue you lose. And if you're going from this bright, colorful little purple character to sort of this uncommunicative, like machine of destruction, there's a whole range of kind of moral ground to be covered there. But yeah, I would say that's sort of a general overview of quite a crazy story.
I have to ask here, when it comes to the story, is there any sort of social or societal commentary that you're kind of going into? For example, RPGs and video games are known, especially story-driven ones, to comment on either religion or politics or wars, anything like that. And I know you have the mention of the substance here, which could be a correlation to a drug. Anything like that you want to share, or just also have the humanity angle with your morals and choices, anything like that you'd like to comment on when it comes to the inspiration?
Yes, totally. And I would definitely say there is a huge aspect of commentary. I mean, first off, it is quite a dystopian world, so I think there's that element where it's just like, I'm not saying I'm making a commentary on the world itself. I'm just saying that's how it is, right? But I think the commentary about humanity kind of comes in, and the sort of slogan of the game is, "How far would you go to save a life? What if that life was yours?" And I think that sort of, above all else and above all the propaganda and all the advertisements that you see in the environment, it's specifically about how you're going to integrate yourself in the world. And we were talking about the whole drug thing. I definitely think there's a correlation there. I personally have never seen. I mean, it's definitely shown as a syringe. There's a scene at the start where the character's getting injected, which is quite brutal. But I've always seen it as sort of a metaphor for. I wouldn't even call it addiction necessarily. I would just say a metaphor for anything that you need above all else. It's almost a metaphor for your own sort of survival instincts, right? It's something that you'll go to great lengths to pursue. So it could be someone you love. It could be someone that, or something that you can't go without. It could be a drug. It could be a kind of food that you like. It could be literally anything. But I think at the end of the day, there's always something that drives us. And as humans, that's kind of what keeps us going. And so, regardless of what that is, I want people to be able to say, okay, how much am I going to value the lives of these other people who are also struggling in this environment versus the thing that I need, obtaining this thing that I need, and how, at what cost am I going to sacrifice my own desires for these other people, or vice versa, how far will I go? So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of commentaries there. I think there's an aspect of talking about even things like immortality and the idea of just life itself, because obviously the whole concept of survival kind of ties into that. But yeah, there's a lot of angles there. I think all the characters have their own sort of story that they want to tell. You've got the characters who have a lot more kind of heart to them, and they have a lot more morality. And I think it's interesting because they provide a perspective to the world that's very much like how do you even exist in this place? Like, how do you belong here in this environment of people who are all trying to just survive, versus people who are at the top of their game and they're just manipulating everyone else to just do their bidding for them, right? So it's I think it's pretty topical. I think there's a ton of things in the game that it forces us to confront our own humanity, but I think it also forces us to confront the world around us and how we engage with it, the choices that we make that fit us into the world that surrounds us. Because that's what you do as a human being. You're making choices every day, whether you want to or not. And I think that's always been the heart and soul of Down South for sure.
Going with the choices here in morality, tell me about the variety of if there's going to be different endings based on your choices. I know there's the dialogue options change, or possibly even no dialogue options depending on what you do. So just the variety here when it comes to finishing the game that people will be able to see when the final product, if and when it does come.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of different endings and I guess the game's progression as a whole, there are 5 main clients who you're supposed to go and exterminate. And so with each of these clients, you have an option to kind of decide what you want to do with them, whether that be sparing them or killing them. And obviously it can get more black, or it can get more kind of morally gray than that even. But I think with that comes sort of there's 5 main endings to correspond with the 5 clients. And so depending on where you lie on the sanity meter and who you have chosen to, obviously there's a lot of different combinations, but you can have chosen to kill a certain amount of people, or you've chosen to spare a certain amount of people. There are 5 different endings, and with those endings as well, there would be a completely different kind of final boss. That it's sort of the summation of every single thing that you've done. And you might end up fighting characters. If you're going down the immoral path, you might end up fighting characters who at one point were your friends, right? And they're like, what's going on here? but at that point you've just got your priorities straight and you just want to get the thing that you need and get out of there. Or you might end up fighting the people who are at the top of the pyramid, and that could also be totally valuable if you're going to try and track down that morality. So yeah, in terms of endings, I would say there's 5. They all again correspond with the sort of different parts of the morality spectrum. There's variations on each, of course, because many different combinations. There's bound to be a few things we've got to change here and there. But yeah, and that all kind of just coincides with what you do throughout the game. So it'll all kind of lead to that final moment.
For the rest of our time here, I want to get into the Kickstarter and the future of the game. And from just looking at it, for people who don't know, Kickstarter is a way for developers or whoever to just launch something. And your Kickstarter for just getting off here not too long ago is already almost there. You're at 2/3 or so of your way to success. So tell me about the Kickstarter and just where we're at and how that plays into this game becoming a reality for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Kickstarter, honestly, yesterday, because it just launched yesterday, and I am blown away by the support. We hit 65%, I think, just today, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, it's really nice to see the community coming together to kind of make something a reality, and I think it's nice, especially for a game about humanity, to be supported by humanity, and to be made a reality. But yeah, the Kickstarter. So we're looking, in Canadian currency, we're looking for 50,000 CAD, and it's essentially just this kind of big collaborative event where we're looking to get funding for the game to make it into a real thing. There's a bunch of tiers, and obviously the world is quite ridden with things like graffiti and billboards. So we're allowing people, and different people as well, different characters. So we're allowing people to get their kind of graffiti tags in the game, or get it, buy some ad space if they want for that kind of thing, and even get their own characters in the game as well. But yeah, it's sort of just a giant push to get this into the eyes of the public, get people to see it, see if they engage with it, get some feedback for ourselves and see how we can change things, and just to kind of grow the community, because a huge part of making a game like this is the community, and I'm quite grateful to have had such a vivid and very talented group of people just supporting this project. But yeah, so it's up right now for the next kind of 30 days or so. I guess 29 now that we're one day in. But yeah, it's quite exciting. We've got, as I said, a bunch of different tiers that you can support it. They're all just sort of varying levels. There's even some physical stuff that we're putting in there. Your stickers and your shirts. We might even consider adding in some other stuff later on. But yeah, and with all of that said, there's a lot of different fun events we'll probably be hosting as well. So things like, speed running for people who like that kind of thing. There'll be even, fan art, or I guess, like kind of design competitions where you can submit your characters and you might have a chance at getting your own character in the game. And even just sort of fun little engagement things, like we'll do a big kind of community canvas where we show off all the different kind of art we've received and stuff like that. So it's just sort of a big collaborative event, and at least that's how I like to look at it. And with that said, we're all just kind of doing it with the goal of getting this thing made, which has been such a it's been a long time in the making, to say the least. So it's been really nice to see that support, and yeah, we'll see if we can get it over the finish line over the next 30 days. But yeah, it's looking pretty optimistic.
It is a big accomplishment to already have that much funding in just a day's time. So congratulations for that. Definitely deserved there for all the work you put in so far. I know there's more to come. And you probably don't have any ballpark of a release date, but just maybe a percentage of how much more work needs to be done, or how much work you've gotten done so far in this project.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I can kind of give a rough ballpark. I would say like 2 years minimum in terms of getting the game out. Just because we've got all the the foundation is there. We've got, again, as I spent all that time making the game's plot, so now we've got that kind of more or less ready to go. And so from there, now we're just sort of looking to get it made. We're just looking at the final 4 or 5 chapters, because we've got the first one made, and we're just gonna kind of use what we've got and then also expand it and really kind of see what makes it tick. But yeah, in terms of what we're looking at, it would just be we're getting some people on board on the team to help things get sped along. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about it. We've got a good team behind the project. I think come a couple of years' time, once we've got a project that's really solid, that's fun. Most importantly, it really says something interesting, and it feels like a polished, complete experience. We'll put it out. So, all the patience and everything like that has been appreciated already so far. But yeah, I would say that's kind of the general look at the future there, just the general ballpark.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time, and you're also really great with working with us. Obviously, with news, it can be very hectic with running around and different events, so you rescheduled for me, which I really appreciate, so thank you very much for that.
Absolutely, not a problem.
Anything else you want to leave for anybody before you go? Ways to reach you or find your game or anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Troop Sushi, all lowercase on every single platform. So, get that in there, and, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, the Kickstarter, obviously. Back the Kickstarter, support the Kickstarter. Let's get this thing made, yeah. Yeah, the project is Down South, Moral Dilemma RPG, platformer kind of thing. And thank you very, very much. I guess that's the final note. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to this game in a couple years and might just stream it. We'll see. We'll see where it gets us.
Such an honor, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And next episode will be out in a week, as always. So stay with us, and we'll play the jingle for you.